Previously on the Game On podcast.
The AFL was here to stay and was going to manage football around the whole of the country.
Yeah.
Those things take time, but with goodwill on all parts, you eventually find a way through.
Yeah, it's a fascinating thing. And look, personally, it's meant to be an AFL competition where I still see it personally as an extended VFL. The relocation, it would have been great. I think both North Melbourne and either St Kilda, Western Bulldogs, someone else, it should be spread around. I think one of those teams should have relocated to Tasmania as well. North Melbourne should have gone to the Gold Coast, in my opinion. And that would give more of an Australian feel than an extended VFL competition, personally.
Yeah, well, Malcolm, I agree totally that there should have been a team from Melbourne relocated to the Gold Coast, and that should have been North Melbourne. But Brayshaw took over from somebody who was the president. He was going to solve all the problems of North Melbourne, and that was very anti them going to the Gold Coast, I think. And I think the AFL offered North Melbourne $100 million to relocate. Now, I don't know that for sure, but that's what's touted. And they still said no.
It's an extraordinary decision, really. Yeah, bizarre.
Yeah, and of course it's too late now because with the club with the AFL having the funds that can prop these clubs up, and of course there should be a team in Tasmania, and in my view, a team should be relocated. I don't think that there'll be a relocated team. I think with a little bit of luck they'll play 8, 9, 10 games down there, 11 games down there, maybe 12, and a few in Melbourne and a few around the rest of the country.
Yeah, I just think it should have been another team, though, in terms of going down to Tasmania. I know Tasmania are against that, but let's remember, Sydney or South Melbourne, everyone forgets that nowadays. That's Sydney. And I think the same thing would have happened. Right. The same thing would have happened in Tasmania. And I just think it's still crazy that there's 10 teams in Victoria.
Well, mate, we all do, but it's not easily resolved.
Sportscast SA presents Game On. Game On. South Australians' destination for everything sports. Local, national, and international sports. AFL football, soccer, basketball, golf, baseball, tennis, cricket, and any other sports played in this wide world. And we're going to have a blast doing it. So sit back, relax, and let's do this thing. Welcome to Game On.
Welcome to Game On. My name's Pete, once again joined by Malcolm. And Wayne Jackson was fantastic last week in explaining, how North Melbourne almost ended up up in the Gold Coast.
Oh, look, and I'm still adamant that they should be. I thought it was poor management decision not to accept that they'd be a superpower up there, and they're selling games to Tasmania anyway. So it's, yes, they'd still be exist and have a few more games in Melbourne, but for what they've sacrificed to be a just
another
really
Melbourne club,
making up the numbers, I think was inept and poor management. And I think it's also disappointing the AFL couldn't say no.
Yes.
Bang, if you want to continue to exist, bang. And it's still an extended VFL. 10 teams in Victoria.
At some stage, there has to be a little bit of a breaking point with that, doesn't there? Because we're going to talk about this a little bit later, but the funding had been revealed that the AFL are giving some of these clubs, and a couple of them are well and truly in the Victorian heartland. So, something's got to break at some stage, and, we'd like to see another team, obviously, in Tasmania, but, maybe.
The trouble is with a broadcast deal that's still unlikely that it's going to break. That's with so much money's in the game, and it's not footy. They're not footy. They're all franchises, corporations, whatever you want to call it. They're not traditional footy clubs.
Yep.
Around the grounds.
To kick off around the grounds, we're going to have a little bit of a look at the NFL, the Super Bowl's coming up, obviously, this coming week. The cricket, local cricket, and some of the soccer. But to kick off today, mate, the baseball, Giants.
McCardle drives one to left field. It's back to the wall, back to the hill, and it's over the fence. You couldn't script it if you tried. The South Australian has brought the entire state to its feet.
J-Mac just staying with that pitch. He wanted a pitch that he could drive, and he knows about
43 years of history. Watch with intent.
Swing it is! The Adelaide Giants are the overall champions of 2023. Amazing scenes.
A championship generations in the making. A 43-year wait is over. The Claxton Shield is coming back to South Australia.
What a huge win.
Fantastic result, for South Australia. So, finally first bit of silverware in the baseball world in that regard for the Claxton Shield. First time in 43 years. Lost the first game in Perth. Came back and really won the two games reasonably convincingly. It was a little bit of a worry in the third game when Perth got the first 2 runs, but came back from there and, yeah.
Well, Perth, you'd expect them to win at home. That is one of the advantages of obviously starting over there. And, sort of blew out a little bit in that game and you thought, okay, what's going to be the mindset coming back here to Adelaide? But they really rallied and did the job in Game 2, which gave them a great opportunity in Game 3. And like you said, a little bit of a worry early on being down 2-0.
I still think too, I know financially that it's Perth, so such a long way to travel and all that. But really the first game should be to the team play the first game at home,
yes.
Second game away, third game back home.
Yes.
I think it was Perth got a pretty reasonable advantage playing first game at home.
Yeah, anyway. But look, that's just the way that it panned out, but it worked out well for the Adelaide Giants having 2 games at home and really build on that momentum from Game 2. And a local lad, Jordan McCardle, gets the home run that gets them back in the game and really sets them up for the win eventually.
He had a big series.
He did.
Both games, he was vital. So, yeah, fantastic.
Local South Australian talent on show and comes through in the clutch.
No, awesome. And look, great down there, full house and all that.
Absolutely.
But then I also, Nord Oval, it would have been 8,000 to 10,000. I would have thought,
and a little bit more an intimate feel, obviously, with the stadium, with the grandstands being enclosed. And yep, hey, look, I was surprised to see on the footage that the crowd was basically right around with the picnic rugs back up on the hill there, and it was great to see.
It was amusing with the streaker after they'd won in terms of the security trying to catch him. Yeah, good luck. Now the AFL, the funding ladder revealed, mate.
Yeah, the AFL came out this week, and obviously with the broadcasting deal and each year the breakdown of clubs. Interesting that Gold Coast and GWS topping it at $25 million apiece.
Yeah, while that's huge money, the problem is that what they're getting from the broadcasting deal, it's actually, if you're sitting there going, out of that, it's actually still good business sense that they added the 17th and 18th sides, getting that extra game in the broadcasting deal and the extra huge amount that brought in.
Yep.
So the 25 million is still chicken feed. But again, it should say, well, why in the hell isn't there been a side in Tasmania? I think it should be as live relocated from Victoria.
Yep.
As I've said, just like Gold Coast should have been and GWS should have been.
Yep.
Like, let's remember Sydney now was South Melbourne relocated.
Yep.
That's forgotten about now. That's all just thought of as Sydney. And, I that's what should have happened. I just think I don't think it's brilliantly administered in that way.
Look, I understand that they're going there on the basis of commercial opportunities through Sydney and obviously the Gold Coast. But in most cases, especially in the Gold Coast, establishing a new team has always been the hard part when it comes to getting supporters to jump on board with the team. At least if, like we've talked about earlier on, if North Melbourne had gone up there, they had a supporter base that may have followed them, a bit like what South Melbourne and Sydney have done as well. And
also,
Brisbane.
the ironic thing is, Brisbane started at the Gold Coast and it didn't work.
Yeah.
So hang on, we then move and put a side there where it hasn't worked in the first place. It's quite a bizarre decision.
It certainly is. Brisbane, North Melbourne and St Kilda each receiving $18 to $19 million each. Melbourne, Port Adelaide, Western Bulldogs, Sydney around the 16 and,
Yeah, look, be what it is. As I said, my beef still that it's not a true national competition. It's an extended beef. I know I'm harping on it like a broken record.
Hopefully we can fix that, obviously, with a team in Tasmania. And like Wayne had said last week, indoor stadium there would be fantastic. And you'd almost get AFL football there almost every weekend, which I think is good for the Tasmanian economy.
Yes, but also I think Wayne's point there that you've probably got to have an indoor stadium
because of the weather conditions.
Because of the weather is a fair point.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, mate, we move on to cricket. The first test in India. I'll let you take the floor on this one, mate.
Oh, absolutely. I think it's the greatest farce I've seen in cricket. You can sit there, Sandpaper Gate, they didn't even get any benefit out of it. I don't mind them getting suspended for a year for utter stupidity.
Yep.
But this is just basically India going, shove it, we're the power of world cricket, we'll do whatever we like. How in the hell you can prepare a pitch and be so blatant about it, preparing it differently for left-handers, because Australia had 5 of the top 7 as left-handers, was just extraordinary.
I couldn't believe my eyes when I saw yesterday that you've basically got both ends of the pitch with 12 mil of grass on both ends on the left-hand side and 15 mils on the right-hand side. I can't understand that Melbourne gets a strike, Brisbane gets a strike for wickets that were under par, and this is as blatant.
It's just blatant cheating.
Absolutely. I could not believe that this would be allowed to happen. Now, the ICC, unfortunately...
the toothless tiger.
...is not going to, step in, unfortunately, here. And this is the sad part about world cricket at the moment, is that it's...
There are so many things wrong with world cricket in terms of... Test cricket is very much under huge threat. Look, we've now got 8,672 2020 competitions around the world.
Yep.
And it's just because it's purely thought of as the mighty dollar and not seeing the whole picture.
Yep.
I go back, the traditional tour of Australia.
Yes.
Anyone, it used to be the social game at Lilac Hill.
Yep.
Then WA, then South Australia, sometimes New South Wales, as well as Queensland before the first test. Now, no warm-up games. Australia opt because their last warm-up game on the tour of India, they prepared a green top and then played the first test on a Bunsen burner. Went, no, well, that's pointless. Every country's got to pull their head in and actually see the whole picture, and it's just farcical.
I just can't understand how the ICC aren't taking control of when all these matches are scheduled, so that way there's no crossover with T20s,
I think
100s, etc., etc. It just makes it
great in theory. I think pretty hard to enforce, but they are a toothless tiger and they're not governing the game.
Yep.
And, India, Australia and England should be pumping money back into... We want a strong West Indies side.
Yep.
Okay. Again, the glory days, Greenwich, Haynes, Richards, Lloyd, Garner, Holding. That's over. But we had the tight test match here and it was just pathetic. They were all out for 70 on their second innings and it was just horrendous.
Yep.
And, world cricket just aren't seeing the whole picture.
I totally agree. Some injuries to Australian players. Yes, I know that they are the pace bowlers and it is going to be a spin-friendly wicket, but is it going to hurt them long-term in India?
Oh, yes, there's no doubt about that. Green's a vital admission. The balance of the whole Australian side's out without Green playing.
Yep.
But then, I'm sorry, the selection of this game with Travis Head.
Well, that was going to be my next question. Travis Head left out.
Now, if there'd been a couple of warm-up games and Renshaw and Hanscom had made hundreds and Travis had failed in that, there could be a little bit of a point made. But hang on, what is the hell's the point that he's been the player of the series here?
Yes.
Despite Warner winning it, which should have been Travis, I think we all acknowledge that.
Yep.
And he has been the last 2 home series. So, but we'll throw that out the bucket, and yet Warner averages 24 over trillions of hits on the subcontinent, still plays.
Yes. I know he struggles a little bit over there, and I can understand that, but you're right. He is in form, and you've got to back him in to carry that form over. If he fails once or twice, then you maybe look at it, but to cut him straight away was just ridiculous.
But also, it got made, Renshaw got made to open again for Queensland at domestic level. That was going to be considered his chance to come back into the Test side. Queensland are told for him to open. That's fine.
Yep.
So he's opening, and then he gets picked all of a sudden in the middle order to go out. And the people acting like he's this super player of spin. Oh, my goodness gracious. And let's be honest, Travis might have gone out and hit a quick 30-odd like Alex did.
Yep.
And on that sort of deck, and I wish I'd said this last week. I was actually, in terms of Agar, I'm a fan. The pitch was just turning a lot is when you do play the left arm orthodox, who doesn't turn it much in general, because these wickets are going to turn it anyway.
Yep. Like
there's balls from Dejasia are turning a mile, and then the next one goes straight. Where Smith played for the spin.
Yeah,
that's what you want the left-hander for. I just think the side they've picked is just shaking your head in disbelief.
Jumping at shadows a little bit with the pitch being a little bit doctored as well. It just seems crazy.
But then why does Renshaw's a left-hander as well?
Yep.
So you replace if you're right-handed, okay, then you can say, okay, we'll play the right-hander.
Yep.
But it just made no sense whatsoever.
Yep.
And and he missed it by a mile too, Renshaw, this first ball. See you later.
It's going to be an interesting watch over the next couple of days with that one there. Todd Murphy making his debut for Australia. Positive.
Look, I'm not so much against that, although I would have played Agar.
Yep.
But he's class. Murphy's looked really good in the few Shield games he's played. Whether throwing him the deep end in India, maybe, but I think he is a different sort of off-spinner to Nathan, so I don't see them the same in that way. People out there, I actually think he reminds me of Peter Taylor, Peter Who. Mm-hmm. I think there's similarities there with his action high over the top. So I can see the difference there, but
So it's a case of horses for courses,
maybe,
especially with the bowling, but the batting, just leaves you scratching your head. And like I said, you're the cricket nut.
Oh.
I'm only following from afar, and even I'm scratching my head going that just doesn't quite make sense. And
I just assumed when I saw Travis, I thought he's crook or he's got COVID,
barley belly,
injury, and then hang on, he's been dropped.
Yep, doesn't make sense. All right, mate, we'll take a quick break. When we come back, we'll have a little bit of a look at the NFL. We'll have a bit of a look at the local cricket, and obviously the Adelaide United in the soccer.
You're listening to the Game On podcast. We'll be right back after this short break.
Welcome back to Around the Grounds. We kick off with the NFL.
Yes, mate. Your neck of the woods, your degree. Go for it, mate.
My specialty, obviously, the countdown to Super Bowl is on 10 a.m. Monday morning, Adelaide time. The Eagles start, from my point of view, slight favourites. Mahomes has been in the Super Bowl before, which is obviously the star quarterback for the Eagles. But Jalen Hurts in his first Super Bowl, I mean, who are you sort of backing? Someone who's been there before, or someone that's in their first Super Bowl?
I think we all tend to go, the team that's been there, but I think in that case it's who settles first. You can do 8 million cliches, who settles first, who gets the first play.
Yep.
Who knows?
Obviously, Mahomes still under a little bit of an injury cloud. Hurts is under a little bit of an injury cloud as well, but not as much as Mahomes. I still back the Eagles in this game, but it's going to be a very tight contest. The Eagles were basically bottom of the NFL in 2020 and have drafted and traded very, very well since, taking a little bit of a long-term view. I think we're starting to see that a little bit more in the AFL as well these days, with some AFL clubs trading away future picks and picking up some established players. And I think we're starting to follow that NFL system a little bit more. So, the NFL Super Bowl, Monday morning, 10 a.m. I'm sure there's going to be plenty of parties around the place.
And the game finishes generally about 4 p.m, doesn't it?
Yeah, around about it's 3.5, 4 hours by the time you add in the Super Bowl commercials, which is obviously the big one that a lot of people actually love watching. And I think a lot of companies pay absolutely top dollar to have that privilege of playing at halftime of the Super Bowl. So, around about 4 p.m. it'll finish, and there'll be probably a couple of sore heads by 5 o'clock Monday afternoon. All right, mate, we move on to local cricket, local Premier League cricket.
Yeah, a few interesting things around the traps last week. East Torrens beat Stir outright, which has helped East Torrens' chances of staying in the top 8.
Mm-hmm.
There was a bit of debate in that game. It was a bit fiery and interesting. I was there at that stage for a while, and a bit of argument on Sturt complaining about the wicket. Well, hang on, you won the toss and sent East Torrens in the week before.
Yes.
It was rain around last week again.
Yep.
I thought it was a bit over the top. I didn't agree whatsoever with someone saying the pitch was dangerous.
Well, but that's part of the charm, I suppose, of playing grade cricket is that you are playing it over 2 weekends. So a lot can happen between first innings or first at bat to the second weekend.
And it was the week before, a bit cloudy, a bit overcast. Every team sent the opposition in. Bit of panic stuff, really.
Yep.
Out of that, I saw it a bit. I thought Sturt were in the wrong in that one, personally.
Obviously, with the Premier League going to possibly a two-tier system next year, who's in the hunt for maybe missing out on the top grade?
It's pretty close at the bottom in terms of East Torrens last week with the outrights really helped them, but they've got to still have the bye, so it's probably a little bit imbalanced with teams still to have the bye.
Yep.
But Northern Districts, Southern District, Adelaide are down. There's no doubt about that.
Yep.
And then the other spots is probably still up for grabs a little bit. You'd suspect Southerns will go down as well, but from there it's probably still up for debate.
Yep. And how many rounds left to go?
It's 4 rounds.
4 rounds to go. So we've got some interesting matches coming up that'll probably shape that table even more over the next 3 or 4 weeks.
Yeah, I know West Torrens play Kensington this week, and West Torrens are currently second and Kenzie are top, so that's a big game.
Yep.
Port are currently third, Uni currently just in the 4 on percentage over Glenelg, so it's certainly it'd probably be out of those 5.
Yep.
From there.
And our mate Jake Brown, how's the injury progressing? Did you catch up with him on the weekend?
No, I haven't caught up with him again since I'd expect he probably won't play this next game.
Yep.
After the weekend. So Kenzie did win outright in that game. It looks like.
Yep.
So
Okay.
Yeah.
Fantastic. All right, moving along, mate. Soccer.
Yeah. Adelaide United came through last weekend again, so that was good news there.
Yep. Obviously beating Brisbane Roar 2-1. Good win at home. Obviously the shock of Hyundai's injury and the 3-3 draw with City obviously meant that they were back on home soil and gave them good opportunity to, step it up in front of their home crowd and really get back into that cauldron of Cooper Stadium, which puts them up to 4th now, which means they're just starting to hit their stride.
Oh, look, they're around the mark, which are playing mainly local South Australian.
Well,
they're going okay.
That's the most positive thing about it. I mean, we talked about, obviously, earlier on with the baseball, with Jordan Mercado, obviously being a local South Australian and doing his bit, obviously, to help the team. Adelaide United have got a fantastic record of developing local talent that really do come up with the goods, and the young too. That's the other thing.
Yeah, we tend then to lose a few after that, unfortunately.
But that's part of part and parcel of
the
game of soccer that you are developing these players for a bigger and brighter career, obviously overseas in some of the bigger markets. But they do generally come back.
Yeah, but we also have lost a few interstate, that's probably I'm not so much mind them go to the greener pastures. But losing the guys at interstate.
And some of that can be due to opportunity, which does happen with a lot of clubs. Doesn't matter whether it's football, soccer, cricket, lawn bowls, 10-pin bowling, whatever the sport is looking for a good opportunity, and sometimes that's why they move.
Expect a superpower to pick up Pete Matthews in the bowling world any time, I would have thought.
I don't know about that, mate, but we'll see how we go. Mate, the Lady Reds with a bit of a tight tussle against Brisbane Roar, sitting 7th at the moment. Bit of work to do, but might just miss out on the finals.
Yeah, bit disappointing. Probably a bit too much work, I suspect. So,
Yeah, we'll watch that with interest. But they've had a reasonably good year. I mean, they've slowly built over the last few years and, starting to make strides.
Yeah, maybe is the perfect word.
No worries. All right, mate, when we come back, we'll have a past player, past legend, or we might have a local. We're still chasing up somebody at the moment, so we'll be back in a minute, mate.
You're listening to the Game On podcast. We'll be right back after this short break. Local legends.
Tonight on our Local Legends series, we've got Chris Flavel, a name that is very synonymous around the bowls community, but we're lucky enough to have him tonight. We had Wayne Jackson, the CEO of the AFL last week, and we've got a Commonwealth game medalist tonight. Welcome, Chris.
Welcome aboard, Chris.
Thanks for having me.
Mate, we'll start from the beginning. How did you get into the sport of lawn bowls?
I was brainwashed as a child. Both sets of grandparents and father played. So as a little tacker, I had no option but to go down the bowls club and watch Dad play and the grandparents play, and then got sick of watching at some point. So thought I'll take it up at the age of 10.
That's a pretty young age to be starting on the green, but in those days. But today, that's pretty much the norm, isn't it?
Today, yeah, like you see a lot of kids getting around, and normally the better you are, the younger you are. So, when I started, it was a bit of an odd choice, and definitely got a fair few jibes at school for it. But I think it's
paid off.
It's paid off in the end, yeah.
Absolutely. What club did you start at, mate?
Port Pirie Bowling Club, so it's 200 bit hours north of Adelaide, so out in the sticks, out in the bush.
Yep. And obviously, first game was with Dad or not, or the grandparents?
I think it would have been the grandfather, yeah. Dad wouldn't have been playing Div 7 at that point. He still would have been playing top divisions. So,
yep.
It took me a little bit to get to play with him, but yeah, definitely played my first game with grandfather.
And just to let our listeners know that don't know a whole lot about lawn bowls, what was your starting position in the team, mate?
On the mat, leader, mate.
Yep. Most players in bowls most players have to start at the lead position, don't they?
Yeah, you got to blood yourself, earn the respect at the front. You got to prove you can roll something straight before you can roll something that bends, I suppose.
That's a pretty good way of putting it. How long were you at Port Pirie for? Port Pirie Bowling Club?
Probably a grand total of 15 years. I moved down to Adelaide until I was in my mid-20s for work. So, yeah, I was fairly loyal.
Oh, fantastic. And which club did you end up at down here in Adelaide, mate?
So, joined Lockleys when I moved down here and currently still there, but I had a bit of a holiday at Payneham in between. So, yeah.
So the last couple of years have been some boom years for yourself. Just explain to the listeners what's been going on for yourself personally as far as the Jackaroos or Para-Jackaroo squad.
Yeah, obviously got the whole build-up to obviously 2022 Birmingham. So I've been lucky enough to be part of the Para-Jackaroo setup since 2016, 2017. Missed out on 2018 Gold Coast, but was still in the system. So...
Chris, so what's the bit there of qualifying in that regard with disability-wise, or I don't mean to be rude, hopefully it doesn't come across like that. So, so what qualifies, and are there different gradings and that sort of thing for probably people out there like myself who aren't experts in that regard, mate?
Yeah, it's not rude at all, mate. It's probably easy if someone asks us into making assumptions, but so in the para space you have visually impaired and physically disabled. So I'm part of the physically disabled group.
Yep.
And we have a bit of a grading system, a bit like you would have like in other para sports, like wheelchair basketball, para soccer. The list goes on. And normally that's a range of things, whether it's limb impairment, limb loss, or if you've got a congenitive condition or a genetic one like I do. There's a few bench tests that you have to go through to assess your range of impairment, and then you get classified into a few groups ranging from, in bowls it starts at B8, which is your least impaired, all the way down to B5 in the physical, which would be mostly wheelchair bound, like quadriplegics.
Yep.
And then you go to blind, which starts at B4 and then goes down to B1, which is basically total blackout blind.
And is there much debating over the gradings and that side of thing? And can that be controversial? Can it be a person try and get graded in a different grade than what they should be, and
obviously it does cause debate even amongst the athletes a little bit because
that's what I was trying to phrase. Yes.
Yeah, like obviously there's a lot of tests that you have to go through, and you have to prove medical records for them to assess you. Good example would be the B7 category, which I'm part of, which ranges from me that would say physically able on a bowling green pretty well. Like I'm impaired in a way. Like I'm not a spry chicken or anything anymore, but goes all the way down to wheelchair users within that one category, and that can it can range from different things. A lot of it comes down to how much balance or movement you've actually got versus how much strength you got. It's all these qualifiers. Like a really good example for that would be my pairs partner in Birmingham, Damo from the Gold Coast. He was also classified as a B7, sitting in a chair. But within our squad, we also have got a bowler who is a B6, and both of them virtually have the same impairment. They've both lost a leg above the knee. But depending on how the amputation all that worked, one of the guys can still use a prosthetic and bowls upright, but because he bowls upright, he's less stable, so therefore he gets downgraded.
Yep.
Where Damo sits in a chair, he technically gains balance with the use of the chair, so he kind of bumps up a grade. So there's a lot of those little things that, if you're looking at if you're looking from the sideline, sometimes, why are you that? Why are you that? And even amongst the athletes, if you're new to it, you kind of, why are you this? Why are you that? But I think most times the assessors get it right. Yeah, there's a few, inconsistencies there. It's never going to be 100% perfect, but I think most people find the correct, grading for themselves.
And most disabilities are individual as well, so it sort of does make it hard when it comes to grading. Mate, being part of the Jackaroo squad over the last few years, or almost 7 or 8 years, what changes have you seen go through that squad?
Well, first of all, I've been through 2 head coaches. So we had when I first started, we had the great Steve Glasson, legend of Australian bowls. What he hasn't done on the green as a player is not worth talking about. And then he, segued into coaching, and became one of the most successful Australian coaches to go along with it. Mm-hmm. At the advent of COVID, he decided that he wanted to take a step back and pursue other interests. He'd given 10, 12 years to the national team as a coach at that point. So we got the new head coach, Gary Willis, jumped into that role with Karen Murphy now as an assistant coach, another ex-player. So I've seen a couple of really good people in that role, but there's also been growth in the squad. You see players go in and out. Like we've had, the great Wayne Rudiger was in the squad when I started. He's since announced his retirement this year, so it was a bit sad to lose the South Aussie out of the squad. But I suppose the biggest thing is probably seeing a lot of the young and emerging, bowlers getting around, like the likes of Nathan Black, Tyson Wilson, those guys getting opportunities in the satellite squads and that to prove their worth in South Australia, which is really good. And I suppose the biggest thing now is that we're tied up the AIS in Canberra now.
Yep.
It's probably got a lot more professional than it was even when I started. So the sport itself has really grown in the high performance space, and all that's probably back to getting results and being a fairly dominant country in that sport.
I noticed, obviously, through the advertisement of Bowls Australia and some of the local affiliations through the state bodies, that the para and the able-bodied athletes, especially for lawn bowls, were very much integrated through Birmingham. Is that correct?
Yep. So we all played at the same venue on the same greens and at the same time. So, both disciplines were going, at the same time. Even from the Jackaroo squad point of view, when we toured over in Birmingham in the lead up to the Com Games, and once we were in the Com Games, we were treated as one big team. There was no differentiation between, you're the Opens and you're the Paras and you're the VIs or whatever it is. It was just one big happy group over there. So from that space, it was good. And bowls is probably one of those sports you really can do that. A lot of us guys in the para space play able-bodied bowls on a day-to-day basis. That's our bread and butter. We play club pennants against able-bodied players. We play a lot of state events against able-bodied players, and some players such as James Reynolds, who's part of the Australian squad now, actually represented ACT in the Open Sides Championship. So, bowls is one of those sports where anyone can play it just about in terms of that. In that respect, it's a good leveler in that respect as well. And it's a good showcase to have both, the physical disabled VIs and just the opens all going at the same time to showcase that we can all play at that level.
I suppose being with some of those big names of the sport, I suppose, really does help your game along, being side by side and practicing with them and conversing and really picking their brain a little bit on certain things that you need to improve on, and they might be able to help you with, and vice versa.
Yeah, there's, as you said, there's a lot of talent in that squad, and that was another thing about the Jackaroo setup, was a lot of those players are more than willing to impart their knowledge, and some of the great players that you think of in terms of Australian representatives, just Aaron Sheriff in the past, and now he's back in the squad. Like Omar, things he's done on the world scene in bowls is really good. Aaron Wilson's a bit of a character, disco, but the way that he applies himself on the green, the way he goes about his craft is, he's a freak. You just can't quantify what he does, but it works for him. And then you got people like Barry Lester that's up in the Gold Coast, who are probably the most professional person that I see, that just leaves no stone unturned in the way he prepares for things. So there's a lot of things you can cherry pick from everyone. They've all got their strong points, which makes why they're there.
Absolutely. Well. All right, mate. We better move on to Birmingham. You had a pretty successful campaign. Tell the listeners what. How you got to that point, obviously practicing here in Australia right through to your gold medal match.
All right, I'll try not to bore them too much, but so the journey probably started back in 2019. We had a first initial camp over in the UK that I was fortunate enough to go on. That was a real eye-opener for me to go overseas and play in the Northern Hemisphere, which is, the conditions are completely different to that of Australia. But then obviously COVID got in between that, and we probably didn't really get back into serious selection / camps and things like that, probably mid 2001. So as we're coming out of the COVID bubble and interstate borders and that opened up, we're a little bit free. I think we had our first trial. We had a split trial where some, due to border restrictions, I went to Tassie for a trial with some of the Queenslanders and WA players, and the Victorian New South Wales players ended up being on the border somewhere. And then, so I think that was November 2001. Then from there, we had another trial January, February up on the Gold Coast, where they specifically prepared a green to replicate UK conditions, which is really unique. And we spent a week on those greens, getting familiar with the UK style of bowls, using UK equipment, modifying actions, things like that, to be able to perform on the overseas conditions, which was a real, bit of a interesting headspace to be in, because you'd finish there, then you have to go back and play pennants in Adelaide, which is
running about 7 seconds quicker.
And then we had a tour in May of last year, which was the last selection trial before the Com Games, where the squad basically got cut in half from that point. So we had one trial, a 2-week tour over there to prove our worth, and then got selected off the basis of that. And then we had what they call the Trans-Tasman. So we played New Zealand back at the same club in Queensland, I think it's Mount Tamborine, that had the greens prepared for UK conditions, and glad to say that we whitewashed the New Zealand team. So we sent a few Kiwis home unhappy, which was good. And then 3-4 weeks later, it was basically off to the UK, where we were in camp for 2.5 weeks before the Com Games, getting ready, and then another week and a half in competition. So I think I spent a grand total of 2 months off work in the calendar year last year. So I'm very grateful to the guys and girls that Binders on for letting me take the time off.
Absolutely. And as you mentioned, COVID was obviously a big thing, but once you sort of got on the greens over there in the UK, you guys hit your straps pretty quickly and put yourselves in a pretty good position in the end.
Yeah, our pool games were pretty good. We had an early loss to England in the pools and a draw against South Africa, but our form was going really well. But the game that probably highlighted that we really had a really good chance is we played Scotland. So the team we ended up playing the gold medal match. We play every team in the pool once, a bit like a round robin.
Yep.
And we beat them in the pool match to make sure that we got into the finals. So that really gave us a lot of confidence going into the finals. And we got drawn England in the semi. So we're playing against England in front of a pretty big crowd and pretty parochial crowd. And, not to say that we played our final in that game, but we played really well. We were very conscious of trying to take the crowd out of the game and keeping them quiet early. And glad to say that we finished that game with an end to go. So we got to really celebrate to get into win a medal of any colour is good, but to play off for gold is something special. But yeah, and then got to the gold medal match and played it in front of a bigger crowd with bigger stands, which I've never experienced before. But the whole atmosphere was brilliant. And unfortunately, the Scots were too good for us on the day. But very happy to walk away with a silver medal out of it.
Mate, you've come a long way since Port Pirie, and you've done very well and represented obviously not only South Australia as a para athlete, but also South Australia in general, but and the sport of lawn bowls. But mate, congratulations on a fantastic Birmingham Commonwealth Games, and mate, we will see you on the green pretty soon.
Yeah, greatly appreciated, and also just helping educate myself and our listeners out there.
No problems. Like I said, if you know anyone that's got a bit of an ailment or disability or anything like that, bowls is a really good sport to get involved in. If you want to, just at a bare minimum, it's a very social aspect. So if someone's lacking that exposure to a bit of socialism, being social and a club environment, it's actually one of those sports you can really get in at the ground level, regardless of your physical ability. So I'd urge all the listeners, if you know someone that might fall into that category, push them towards the bowls club because they're very inclusive at that rate, and get out and do things. It's really
let's not underestimate the vital part of mental health in terms of mixing, doing things, and that that's more important than winning or losing in the end. And I think that gets a little bit forgotten at all levels.
Not to derail the conversation too much longer, like this whole my condition, which did have some mental health issues myself when I got diagnosed, it did pull me through that a little bit, that I still had that sporting outlet to go to that I was still reasonably good at. I could have quite easily given up on a few things, and you stuff, your body's going to do this and that, and the future's not bright, but the old silver cloud to silver lining to a dark cloud, so to speak, quite literally now with a silver medal. But I'm the same. I can't underestimate the power of just that mental well-being, especially when you're going through some life-changing things, so to speak.
Very much so.
And clubs are whatever your chosen sport is are great for that.
Absolutely. Mate, as you mentioned, look on bowls.com.au for your local club if you want to get involved, not only from a disabled point of view, but if you're an able body that just wants a bit of a game of barefoot bowls, or join into some competition, there's a club near you. And, mate, we look forward to seeing you out on the green, and hopefully another chance at a medal at the next Commonwealth Games, mate.
Well, 4 years to work on that one, so fingers crossed.
Mate, we'll track and keep an eye on your progress, and hopefully get you back on the show again, mate.
No worries. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, mate.
Greatly appreciated.
You're listening to the Game On Podcast. We'll be right back after this short break.
We've just been speaking with Chris Flavel, a para-athlete for the Para-Jackaroos for the lawn bowls. Chris was actually my skip when I first started playing lawn bowls and, gave me some very, very good pointers along the way. And fantastic to come back. Him and his partner, Damien Delgato, win silver at Birmingham.
And it was a great education. Look, obviously I'm not, limited, very, very limited knowledge in that regard, and probably asked elementary questions, which I think 99% of our listeners would have been wondering the same thing. And
absolutely.
You sort of hesitated a little bit, but Chris was great.
And we wish him all the best, hopefully getting there in 4 years' time.
And I think it was a classic too there with majority of people with any disability were actually quite comfortable with questions being asked and just get yourself out there. And it was. In the end, it was quite just a logical, common sense conversation.
Yep. And the stigma these days of asking those questions is certainly a lot better received, and athletes are quite willing to talk about it, and I think Chris did a fantastic job of explaining it.
Definitely.
We thank him again, mate.
Liking this podcast? Please like, rate, and subscribe. Happy days.
All right, mate, we kick off Happy Days today with a happy birthday. We'll stick with the cricket theme a little bit, considering it's not going too well over in India, but we'll stick with the happy birthday to Glenn McGrath.
Glenn McGrath.
Born in 1970 this week. 124 tests, 563 wickets at 21.64 with a best bowling of 8 for 24.
He's pretty incredible. You can virtually say now, what was your 319th test?
I have heard that, yeah.
He will quote it. And I actually have seen that in action with him, and it's quite insane. Like, I'll be honest, I'm pretty reasonable with my memory sort of thing, and I floor people with that. But he's elite. He's in the Wally Miller class of people out there who know around the tracks where I'm coming from. He's pretty incredible.
I couldn't believe when I had heard him do that. He'll remember the ground, the person, the ball, what ball of the over, and everything else, what wicket it was. Truly remarkable. And you just always could rely on Glenn McGrath for line and length. He was just fantastic at putting it on the spot, wasn't he?
Well, they actually did do it at training. They put 20-cent piece at training at the things. Yeah, so I've spoken to Dizzy with it about it, and he would consistently hit it. Unbelievable. So happy birthday to Glenn McGrath. Mate, we move on to Test cricket. Alan Border, named as 12th man in 1979 for Australia. It was the only time he missed one. Yeah, he did have a little bit of a slow start to his career and was around the mark there, but then once he established himself...
He never looked back.
Oh, and he carried that Australian side for a fair while. We were in the doldrums. We won the World Cup, beating England in the final. We sort of came from nowhere, weren't really expected. And Steve Wall was the Iceman with bowling at the end. And that sort of probably kick-started before the Ashes tour, where we went as supposedly the worst team and the 89 Ashes, and then won 4-0 and sort of kick-started from there, where he decided he was going to stop being so... He thought he'd been the summary from Ian Chappell, a little bit, you'd talk too much, too nice to the opposition, and he became a bit more... tough and
hard-nosed, and it worked out well. Is Australia sort of in that same boat now where we're relying on one or two players to get the job done?
Oh, probably a little bit in the batting. It is susceptible. Like, David Warner's surviving on thin ice at the moment, and it is a bit of a worry with two 35, 36-year-old opening batsmen. Rodney Malcolm-Hogg tonight said, well, if you weren't going to play... He's in favour of Travis opening in India. So, it was an interesting call.
Food for thought, absolutely. Mate, in 2018, the 23rd Winter Games was opened in Pyongyang, South Korea.
It's pretty funny, the Winter Olympics. It took a little bit of a while to click on, and let's be honest, we probably follow it when we think we're a chance of winning something. That's probably pretty traditional. And we glimpse at the sports every 4 years because it's something unique, something different.
Yes.
And then, there was a couple others, but Steve Bradbury's the one we still always remember.
Of course.
We all remember.
That was the one I was going to bring up.
You can't not.
And the girls in the aerial skiing have always done reasonably well, but geez, it's a tough sport.
Oh, it's huge. It's there's been some fantastic individual performances there, but I'm sorry, I reckon 99% of us again. Steve Bradbury's the one which immediately comes to mind.
Absolutely, and that will remain for quite some time. Last man standing. All right, mate, we move on in 2018 as well. Tottenham Hotspurs edge out Arsenal 1-0 at Wembley Stadium in a Premier League game, which is nothing new, but it was a record crowd for a single game at the Premier League of 83,222.
Richie Beno. 222.
222, yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're a bit spoilt here. Obviously, we get Anzac Day at the MCGs full with almost 100,000, Grand Final Day almost full with 100,000, and a couple of other games throughout the year that attract 80,000. Do you think we're spoilt here a little bit in Australia?
Well, it's quite incredible that Australia's got a ground. When you think of our overall population compared to everyone else around the ground, yet I think there's now a ground in India which holds more.
Yep.
But Australia, the G has been the big sporting stadium for, almost since Adam and Eve were sharing apples.
Yeah.
It's quite a remarkable thing in that way.
You go around Australia, I mean, Perth now got 60,000. Adelaide Oval can hold 52 or 53,000. The Gabba's going to get an upgrade for the Olympics coming up, so that'll probably hold 70-odd thousand. You've got two big grounds in Melbourne, obviously with Etihad or Marvel Stadium and the MCG.
It probably shows what a sporting country we are, I think. And
we always bat well above our averages when it comes to per head of population at the Olympics. Exactly. Yeah. So, interesting that 83,000 is one of the records in England as well. I know that they're lacking for space. We do have a little bit of space, but I think we've made the most of it.
And let's, remember, South Australia, for our population, we're effectively the number one, and that that gets very little recognition. We show that consistently with Test cricket. Yep. Our rate of population is number one.
Absolutely. All right, mate, we'll take a very, very quick break. We'll come back with the extra time big finish.
You're listening to the Game On podcast. We'll be right back after this short break. Extra time. Big finish.
All right, mate, to kick off the extra time big finish, we're going to talk a little bit of AFL today, but we'll start off with AFL as our first subject. Bruce McAvaney and Eddie Maguire given life membership.
I'll be honest, I'm amazed that Bruce hadn't been made a life member
Totally
years
agree.
ago.
Totally agree.
I think it was staggering that he wasn't a life member. And okay, we can Eddie everywhere, Eddie Collingwood and all that side of things. And yes, there are some things which probably do great is the perfect term, but let's also remember how much he's done overall for the game. I do think those two are no-brainers.
Absolutely. And, I must admit, like you, I was dumbfounded that Bruce wasn't already in there. That's a stat that I didn't know, and it was interesting to hear that he'd gone up there. But you're right. Eddie was probably the other one that you go, oh, not Eddie again. But you're right. He's done a lot for the AFL and football in general, and well and truly deserves, and those guys are broadcasting superstars really at the end of the day, and they should be rewarded for that.
Oh, very much so, and you can certainly make big cases for, KG's obviously the one here.
Absolutely.
And that. David Wildy's now he's commentated 30 years plus of grand finals now as well, with Samford mainly. There's some legends around the traps.
You never know. We might get Wilds on at some stage.
I think we will. LeBron James.
Yeah, mate, NBA. We're going to go through some of the scores this week, but really the big one was LeBron James breaks the all-time scoring record this week, beating Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. But it was a record that was held since 1984, and LeBron himself didn't know of the record up until a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, that's extraordinary, really. You would have thought because scoring a goal kicking, points, scoring in basketball, you would have thought would be the big one.
Well, I think a lot of those sports really go on rings, so championship rings. Obviously, that's the big one. But you're right. You'd think that would have been front of mind. It may have also been a case of that no one thought no one was going to break it. I mean, it stood since 1984. LeBron's just one of those players that's just amazing.
be a little bit more bewildering. Like, let's be honest, American call everything the World Series and, number one with everything, whatever they're doing.
Yes.
So you would have thought a record like that
would have been
in America would have been front and centre.
Absolutely.
So, a bit surprising.
It's one of those records that a lot of people didn't know about, and listening to some of the broadcasting, even they were dumbfounded, going, it's not a record that they openly knew straight away.
Yeah.
Crazy. Weird. All right, mate, we move on to the WNBL. Lauren Jackson playing in a tribute game breaks down with a bit of injury.
Yeah, pretty early in the game. Bit sad. You're quite sad in that way. You can argue, I think she is probably our greatest female basketballer.
Mm-hmm.
I think Rachel very much pushes Lauren in that regard. And, incredible then to have that, I think, 10 to 12-year gap and come back and perform quite strongly at the age of 41.
Absolutely.
Again. Oh, she's a superstar.
She had a little bit of an injury going into this game, and I know that she was desperate to get out on the court. But, unfortunately, the injury, we didn't want to see her play. But, she's been a great servant to basketball, not only here in Australia but definitely abroad. And she's a superstar, and you're right, coming back after 10 years and still performing at a high level just shows how good she is.
Eloquent, always a great figure for women's basketball. Tennis, women's tennis. We said we were going to talk about this last week.
We did indeed. We talked about the men's world number ones for the most amount of weeks and also Grand Slam titles. We did say that Steffi Graf holds the all-time record for both men and female players, which may be broken by Novak Djokovic in the next week or two. But Graf at 377. Martina Navratilova was the one that just pipped Serena Williams, and I thought it was Serena as well before I did a little bit more research.
No,
but
full credit to you for how much research you did.
Yeah, mate. 377 for Graf, 332 for Martina Navratilova, and 319 for Serena Williams. Just in the last few years, obviously, motherhood and also some injuries caught up with her a little bit. Chris Evert at 260, Martina Hingis at 209 and Monica Seles at 178, and that is including, obviously, her absence from the game after the stabbing.
That's the one where you wonder, what would have.
Well, and that's why I added her to the list, because not only was she in the top 5 or 6, she was still in the top 5 or 6 on the basis that she did miss some time out of the game because of that incident.
Who knows where she'd be. Steffi
Graf comes in second at 22 Grand Slams, but Serena pips her at 23 Grand Slam victories. Martina Navratilova at 18. Chris Evert at 18 as well. Very understandable considering they're very, very good friends. And Margaret Court at 11 were the top 4 or 5 Grand Slam winners.
It's interesting that falling away is not the right term, but surprising there's such a gap, the 18 to 11.
Yeah, and also a little bit, that Martina and Chris Evert really held that record for quite some time, and then Graf comes along, beats it, and then Serena comes along and beats it. So it's really only been in the last couple of generations that those records have started to tumble, and we've had such dominant women players.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
So, it's going to make an interesting conversation for the greatest of all time, but really at the end of the day, the top 6 or 7... world number ones, as far as weeks go, have all retired.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yes. Very interesting. All right, mate. AFLW, thought we'd cover that coming up at the moment. The Carlton coach steps aside at the start of the AFLW season after a whole club review. Good or a bad thing?
Daniel Harford, he's been there for a fair while. Sounded like there was a bit of
part-time.
Animosity on the role and the time.
Yeah, he was spending part-time, and I think that after the whole club review, I think the club wanted to move in a direction of being a full-time coach.
So, understandable. Probably a little bit of surprise it didn't happen, say, 3 to 4 weeks ago, but...
It is what it is, correct.
Yep.
All right, mate, we finish off on the AFL. We'll have a little bit of fun here. Who finishes higher, Sydney or Brisbane? I thought I might test you with this one.
Yeah, it's a great question on that, because Brisbane's defence with Adams going down, I think, is vulnerable, but their midfield is dynamite. I'll go Brisbane still, just as a guess, but I really think that's a toss of the coin.
And that's why I chucked it in, mate.
Yep.
And the second one I've got tonight, just for a bit of fun, Richmond and Freo.
I think Richmond with the midfield with Taranto and Hopper, they've topped up. They're still serious. And Richmond last year managed to grab defeat from jaws of victory in a few games, and where Collingwood went the other way, ridiculously the other way.
Absolutely.
I think Richmond, I know Jade Rawlings, the great man, the premiership coach of the most important competition in the land,
of course,
has tipped Richmond to finish minor premiers. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Very interesting coming from Twig there that
yes.
Richmond might be up there for the minor premiership. I think Brisbane as well, only just. I think that one's going to be a flip of the coin as well. I totally agree with you. They've both got such great squads, and you've got a young Sydney squad that is only going to get better over time, and Brisbane have been around the mark for a few years. So, yeah, you're right. Toss of the coin. I'm not as bullish on Richmond finishing minor premier, but I do think they're going to definitely improve a lot more this year and are going to be in it. But I do see them finishing above Freo, but I think Freo have made good strides in the last couple of years. It's just a matter of whether they can maintain it. And
can James Aish maintain his record? James Aish, 24 games for Nord, 2 premierships, amazingly 1 loss in his career at Nord. So in the gather round, because Fremantle had named first, Aishi gets his old locker back, and don't worry, he's already claimed the number 43 locker, and that's where we are putting the pump under James that Freo better take home the chocolates against Gold Coast.
I might have to head to that round, mate, and just for that pure stat right there, I think Aishi could maintain his winning record at the parade.
That was a bit of fun when that first came up. Let's just say both Andrew and Michael were not aware of that stat.
Yeah, interesting. All right, mate, we've had a fantastic episode tonight. We've covered a big range of topics, but we've also spoken to some very, very special guests in Chris Flavel, Para-Jackaroo for the Lawn Bowls.
Educational.
Very educational. As per usual, mate, we promise to do better next time.
Thanks, folks.
Thanks, folks.
In this crazy world we live in, we all need the distraction. Enjoying the show? Like, rate, and subscribe. Hook up and connect with us on social media at Sportscast SA. We'll see you next time on Game On.